The war drums of Korthek had been silent for 300 years, and Vorth knew why. No species in the galaxy dared challenge the Korthani Empire anymore. They had learned what it meant to face beings who had crawled from the acid pools of a true deathworld, who had earned their place at the top of the galactic food chain through millennia of surviving. Where others would die screaming, the massive dreadnought Shadowbane drifted through the void, its dark hull scarred by countless battles. Inside its armored corridors, Korthani warriors moved with the fluid grace of apex predators. Their chitinous skin gleamed under the harsh lights, and their forearms moved in perfect coordination as they maintained their weapons. Each warrior stood 8 feet tall, their bodies honed by evolution on a world that killed the weak without mercy. Vorth examined the star charts in his command chamber, his secondary arms manipulating the holographic display while his primary hands rested on the nerve-linked control interface. The Outer Rim territories had been quiet for too long, and quiet territories made the High Command nervous. Nervous High Command meant patrol fleets like his needed to find something to justify their existence. The sensor officer, a young warrior named Grex, approached with the quick, careful steps that all Korthani learned on their homeworld. Moving carelessly around other predators was a fast way to die, even among their own species. Commander, we have detected an uncharted system approximately 6 light cycles from our current position, Grex reported, his voice carrying the subtle harmonics that indicated excited anticipation. Vorth's interest peaked. Uncharted systems meant unclaimed resources, and unclaimed resources meant opportunities for glory. More importantly, it meant the possibility of finding new species to bring under the Empire's protective wing. The galaxy was vast, but truly habitable worlds were rare, and species capable of spaceflight were rarer still. "Show me," Vorth commanded, his voice rumbling with the deep tones that marked him as a high-ranking warrior. The holographic display shifted, revealing a star system with multiple planets orbiting a stable yellow star. The third planet from the sun glowed blue and green, covered in what appeared to be vast oceans and continents rich with vegetation. Preliminary scans indicate a thriving civilization, Grex continued, his excitement barely contained. The world appears to be a garden. Planet with low gravity and abundant water. Long-range sensors detect numerous population centers and what appears to be primitive spacecraft in orbit. Vorth felt his hunting instincts stir. A garden world with primitive inhabitants was exactly the kind of easy conquest that would impress the High Command. The Korthani had long ago learned that most species in the galaxy were soft, weak creatures who had evolved on gentle worlds where survival was guaranteed. They made excellent subjects once they learned to fear and respect their betters. Set course for the system, Vorth ordered. Deploy the fleet in standard intimidation formation. These garden dwellers will learn what it means to face the children of Korthik. The journey to the unknown system took 3 days, during which time Vorth reviewed the tactical data his sensors had gathered. The target world supported a population of several billion beings, all apparently confined to a single planet. Their technology appeared to be based on primitive chemical propulsion and basic electromagnetic radiation communications. Most curious of all, they seemed to have no defensive installations or military fleets of any significant size. They appear to be a peaceful species, Grex observed as they studied the incoming data. No orbital defense platforms, no military shipyards, no evidence of weapons testing or conflict preparation. Vorth felt a familiar mixture of contempt and pity. Every species went through this phase, the naive belief that the universe was a safe place where rational beings could coexist through dialogue and compromise. The Korthani had learned better during their first 1,000 years of spaceflight, when they had encountered species after species that needed to be taught the harsh realities of survival. Peaceful species do not remain peaceful for long, Vorth replied, his voice carrying the wisdom of experience. They either learn to fight or they learn to serve. These beings will be given the same choice we offer all newcomers to the galaxy. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system, 12 massive warships arranged in the traditional diamond formation that had struck fear into the hearts of countless species. The Shadowbane led the formation, its weapon systems powered but not yet targeted. Vorth believed in giving new species a chance to surrender before demonstrating the consequences of resistance almost immediately. The primitive beings began broadcasting messages in their crude electromagnetic spectrum. The universal translators worked quickly to decode their language, revealing a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and what appeared to be genuine welcome. The aliens called themselves humans and claimed to represent a planet called Earth. They want to establish diplomatic contact, Grex reported, his tone suggesting he found the concept amusing. They are requesting permission to approach our flagship with what they call a diplomatic envoy. Vorth considered this development. Most species required a demonstration of superior firepower before they would agree to negotiations. These humans either possessed unusual confidence in their abilities or were so naive that they actually believed first contact would be a friendly exchange of gifts and cultural information. Grant them permission to approach, Vorth decided, but maintain weapons lock and full shields. If this is some form of primitive suicide attack, I want to be prepared. The human vessel that approached the Shadowbane was almost insultingly small, barely larger than a Corthony escape pod. Its hull was made of primitive metal alloys, and its propulsion system appeared to be based on controlled chemical explosions. The fact that these beings had achieved spaceflight at all with such crude technology was either impressive or pathetic, depending on one's perspective. As the human ship docked with the Shadowbane, Vorth prepared himself for what he assumed would be a brief and one-sided conversation. The humans would be given the standard ultimatum: submit to the Empire and accept protection in exchange for resources and obedience, or face the consequences of defying a superior species. The airlock cycled, and the first humans to set foot aboard a Corthony vessel walked into what they believed was a historic moment of interspecies contact. They had no idea they were about to learn why the Corthony Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, or that their small, blue world was about to become the latest addition to an empire built on the simple truth that in the vast darkness of space only the strong survived. Vorth watched the humans approach through the ship's internal sensors, noting their small stature, their fragile appearance, and their obvious excitement at this momentous occasion. Soon, he thought, they would learn what it meant to meet the apex predators of the galaxy. The diplomatic reception chamber aboard the UEN Defiant buzzed with nervous energy as the crew prepared for humanity's first official contact with an alien species. Admiral Brooks adjusted his dress uniform one final time, knowing that every detail of this moment would be recorded for history. The chamber had been decorated with examples of human art, music, and scientific achievements, a carefully curated display meant to present humanity as a mature, peaceful civilization ready to join the galactic community. The Corthony delegation that materialized from the transport beam immediately dominated the room with their imposing presence. Their leader, Sub-Commander Grex, stood nearly 9 feet tall, his forearms moving in fluid coordination as he surveyed the human reception committee. His chitinous skin reflected the chamber's lights like polished armor, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator evaluating potential threats. "Welcome aboard the Defiant," Admiral Brooks said, stepping forward with a diplomatic smile. "I am Admiral Brooks, representing the United Earth Nations. We are honored to make contact with your species and look forward to establishing friendly relations between our civilizations." Grex's response came through the universal translator with mechanical precision. "I am Sub-Commander Grex of the Corthony Empire. We have come to evaluate your species and determine your place within our domain. You will provide us with complete information about your capabilities, resources, and population." The human delegation exchanged glances, their diplomatic training kicking in as they processed what sounded like a demand rather than a request. Dr. Emma Cross, the mission's xenobiologist, stepped forward with her prepared presentation about human civilization and culture. "We would be delighted to share information about our species." She began activating a holographic display that showed images of Earth from space. Humanity has developed across our homeworld over millions of years, adapting to a wide variety of environments and challenges. As the presentation continued, Grex and his warriors observed the humans with growing amusement. The images showed a blue-green world covered in vast oceans and continents rich with vegetation. The humans spoke proudly of their cities, their technology, and their achievements, but to Corthony eyes, it all looked remarkably soft and easy. "Your world appears to be a garden planet," Grex observed, his tone carrying a hint of dismissal. "Abundant water, moderate temperatures, gentle weather patterns. Your species has been fortunate to evolve in such comfortable conditions." Dr. Cross nodded enthusiastically. "Earth does provide a wonderful environment for life. Of course, we have our challenges too. Weather patterns can be quite severe in some regions, and we've had to adapt to a wide variety of ecosystems and natural dangers." The Corthony delegation found this amusing. One of Grex's subordinates, a warrior named Vex, spoke up. "Define severe weather for us. What constitutes a dangerous storm on your world?" "Well," Dr. Cross replied, calling up images of various Earth weather phenomena, "we have hurricanes that can reach wind speeds of over 200 kilometers per hour, tornadoes that can destroy entire settlements, and lightning storms that can strike with tremendous electrical force." The Corthony warriors exchanged what might have been laughter. On Corthic, acid storms with winds exceeding 500 kilometers per hour were considered mild weather suitable for outdoor recreation. The electrical discharges that these humans found so threatening would barely be noticed on a world where the atmosphere itself was corrosive enough to dissolve most known metals. "And what of your wildlife?" Vex continued. "What predators did your species face during your evolution?" Admiral Brooks gestured to Dr. Cross, who brought up images of various Earth animals. "We evolved alongside many formidable creatures. Large predators like lions, tigers, and bears posed significant threats to early human populations. We also had to contend with venomous snakes, aggressive insects, and various marine predators." The Corthony delegation studied the images with what appeared to be polite interest. The creatures shown were certainly impressive by the standards of most garden worlds, but they seemed almost quaint compared to the horrors of Corthic. The largest of these predators were smaller than the average Corthony child, and their methods of attack appeared to be simple physical trauma rather than the sophisticated biochemical warfare employed by Corthony predators. "Your species appears to have faced reasonable challenges," Grex conceded diplomatically. "Now, tell us about your military capabilities and history of warfare." The human delegation hesitated before Admiral Brooks responded. "Humanity has unfortunately engaged in numerous conflicts throughout our history. Our military technology has evolved from simple weapons to sophisticated systems capable of tremendous destruction. We have developed nuclear weapons, advanced aircraft, and defensive systems designed to protect our populations." As the humans described their military history, the Corthony delegation listened with growing confidence. The conflicts described seemed to last mere years or decades, while Corthony spawn battles continued for centuries. The weapons technology, while impressive for a garden world species, appeared to be based on primitive chemical propulsion and nuclear fission rather than the plasma and antimatter systems used by truly advanced civilizations. "Your weapons fire metal projectiles using chemical explosives?" Vex asked, his tone suggesting he was confirming something almost too primitive to believe. "Our small arms, yes," Admiral Brooks confirmed, "though we also have energy-based weapons and missile systems for larger conflicts." The Corthony warriors nodded politely, but their body language suggested they were no longer taking the humans seriously as a potential threat. Species that still relied on kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion were clearly in the early stages of technological development. As the cultural exchange continued, Dr. Cross mentioned various aspects of human society and achievement. She spoke of their exploration of space, their scientific discoveries, and their efforts to understand and classify the universe around them. Almost as an afterthought, she mentioned their system for categorizing planetary environments. "We've developed a comprehensive classification system for world types, she explained. Earth rates as a Class 12 deathworld in our databases, though that's really just scientific terminology for cataloging purposes. The Korthany translator processed this information, but the significance was lost in the technical jargon. The warriors heard the term deathworld, but assumed it was some form of primitive classification system that bore no relation to proper galactic standards. As the meeting progressed, Sub-Commander Grex began to formulate his report for the fleet. Commander, these humans were clearly a young species that had been fortunate enough to evolve on a particularly gentle world. Their technology was primitive, but showed potential for development under proper guidance. Their military capabilities were minimal, and their peaceful nature suggested they would adapt well to life under the Empire's protection. The session concluded with the humans expressing their hope for continued peaceful contact and cultural exchange. They seemed genuinely excited about the possibility of joining a galactic community and learning from more advanced species. Their naivety was almost endearing, and Grex found himself looking forward to the moment when they would realize the true nature of their situation. As the Korthany delegation prepared to return to their ship, Admiral Brooks made one final attempt at diplomacy. "We hope that our species can work together as equals in the years to come. Humanity has much to offer, and we're eager to learn from your civilization." Grex's response was polite but firm. "Your species will indeed have a place within our empire. We will give you time to consider our offer of protection and guidance. Choose wisely, as the galaxy can be a dangerous place for those who stand alone." The humans watched the Korthany delegation depart, unaware that they had just been given an ultimatum disguised as a diplomatic courtesy. In their excitement about first contact, they had failed to recognize the predatory nature of their visitors or the true meaning behind their seemingly reasonable requests for information. The red dust of the Australian outback stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by scattered scrub brush and the occasional rocky outcropping. Battlemaster Krex surveyed the landing site with the practiced eye of a veteran warrior, noting the sparse vegetation and apparent lack of any significant threats. This was clearly a wasteland, probably chosen by the humans to demonstrate how little they had to lose. Krex's strike force consisted of 12 elite Korthany warriors, each armed with plasma rifles and protected by battle armor that had been tested against the worst horrors of their homeworld. They had volunteered for this mission as much out of curiosity as duty, eager to see what these soft garden dwellers considered a dangerous environment. The human escort, a cheerful woman named Dr. Martinez, wore nothing more than light clothing and a wide-brimmed hat. She carried a small pack of supplies and seemed completely at ease in what the Korthany assumed was hostile territory. Her casual demeanor only reinforced their belief that this world posed no real threats to anyone with proper training. "Welcome to Australia," Dr. Martinez said, gesturing at the harsh landscape around them. "This is one of our more challenging environments, but we thought you might find it interesting from a biological perspective. The ecosystem here has evolved some unique survival strategies." Krex nodded dismissively. The temperature was barely above freezing by Korthany standards, and the air was so thick with oxygen that it felt almost intoxicating. The gravity was less than half what his warriors were accustomed to, making every movement feel unnaturally light and easy. "We will conduct a standard reconnaissance patrol," Krex informed their human guide. "Our warriors need to understand the tactical environment before we proceed with formal negotiations." Dr. Martinez smiled and adjusted her hat. "Of course. Just, remember to watch where you step and try not to touch anything without asking first. Some of our local wildlife can be a bit temperamental." The Korthany warriors spread out in a standard formation, their sensors scanning for threats while their weapons remained ready. The first few hours passed without incident, though several warriors reported minor equipment malfunctions. Their armor's cooling systems seemed to be working harder than expected, and some of their sensor readings were inconsistent. It was Warrior Tusk who first encountered what the humans called a huntsman spider. The creature was roughly the size of a human hand with long legs and a body covered in brown hair. It moved with startling speed across the ground, causing Tusk to raise his weapon instinctively. "Harmless?" Dr. Martinez called out cheerfully. "Well, mostly harmless. The bite can be painful, but it's not usually dangerous to humans. I'm not sure how your physiology would react, though." Tusk's confidence was shaken when the creature suddenly leaped directly at his face. His reflexes, honed by years of combat on Korthik, were fast enough to catch the spider before it reached him. But the experience of being attacked by something so small and seemingly insignificant was unnerving. The real problems began when the warriors encountered their first bull. Ants. The insects were larger than any ants they had ever seen, nearly an inch long with massive mandibles and aggressive behavior. When one of the creatures bit warrior Grix through his armor, the pain was immediate and surprisingly intense. "Bull ants," Dr. Martinez explained, watching as Grix tried to remove the insect from his leg. "They're quite territorial. The sting is supposed to be one of the most painful in the insect world, though most humans get used to it after a few encounters." The Korthini warriors exchanged glances. Most humans got used to being stung by creatures that could penetrate their battle armor. This seemed unlikely, but Dr. Martinez spoke as if it were a common occurrence. As the day progressed, the warriors encountered an increasingly disturbing array of wildlife. A taipan snake, one of the most venomous creatures on Earth, slithered across their path with casual indifference. Dr. Martinez calmly redirected the group around it, mentioning that the snake's venom could kill a human in less than an hour. "How do your people survive in such an environment?" Krex asked, his respect for human resilience beginning to grow. "Oh, we've learned to adapt," Dr. Martinez replied. "Most of us grow up knowing what to avoid and how to treat various bites and stings. It's just part of life, really." The true horror began when night fell. The Korthini had evolved on a world where darkness brought increased danger, but they had never experienced anything like the subtle malevolence of the Australian night. The temperature dropped, though it remained comfortable by their standards, and the sounds of the nocturnal ecosystem began to emerge. It started with the spiders. Huntsman spiders were joined by funnel web spiders, redback spiders, and dozens of other species that seemed to exist solely to inflict pain on unwary victims. The warriors' armor sensors detected dozens of small creatures moving in the darkness, each one potentially lethal according to their human guide. "That's a blue-ringed octopus," Dr. Martinez said, pointing to a small, colorful creature in a tide pool they had discovered. "Beautiful, isn't it? One bite contains enough venom to kill 26 adult humans. There's no antivenom, so if you get bitten, you just have to hope your life support systems can keep you alive until the toxin wears off." Warrior Nex, who had been reaching toward the attractive creature, jerked his hand back as if burned. "Your people know about these dangers, and yet you still live here." "Well, the blue-ringed octopus is actually quite shy," Dr. Martinez explained. "They rarely attack unless they're threatened. Most people never encounter them, and those who do usually know to keep their distance." The breaking point came when they encountered a saltwater crocodile. The massive reptile emerged from a waterhole with prehistoric grace, its armored hide and powerful jaws making it look like something from the warrior's worst nightmares. The creature was nearly 20 feet long and moved with the confident patience of an apex predator. "Now that's impressive," Dr. Martinez said, pulling out a small device to take photographs. "That's a big one, probably around 60 years old. They can live over 100 years and grow even larger. This fellow could probably bite a small boat in half." The crocodile's jaws snapped shut with a sound like breaking stone. Krex's sensors indicated that the creature's bite force exceeded anything in the Korthini military's database. Worse still, Dr. Martinez was walking closer to get better pictures, apparently unconcerned by the presence of a creature that could easily kill a fully armored Korthini warrior. "Your people hunt these creatures for food?" Krex asked, his voice barely steady. "Some do," Dr. Martinez replied, "though it's more common to just avoid them. They're actually quite important to the ecosystem. We've learned to coexist with most of our predators rather than trying to eliminate them. By the time rescue shuttles arrived to extract the strike force, only 3 of the 12 warriors were still conscious. The others had succumbed to a combination of spider bites, snake venom, and sheer psychological trauma. Krex himself was found sitting motionless beside a tree, staring at a drop-bear warning sign that Dr. Martinez had claimed was just a local joke. "I don't understand," he whispered to the rescue team. "How do they live like this? How do they sleep at night knowing that everything around them is trying to kill them?" The medic, a young human named Tom, shrugged as he helped load the traumatized warriors into the shuttle. "You get used to it, I guess. Australia's not really that bad once you know what to look for. My grandmother used to walk to school through territory like this every day." As the shuttle lifted off, Krex caught a glimpse of Dr. Martinez waving goodbye from the ground. She was still smiling, still apparently unconcerned by the fact that she was standing alone in what the Corthany had learned was essentially a death trap disguised as a continent. The worst part was her parting comment, transmitted over the shuttle's radio. "I hope you enjoyed your visit to one of our safer territories. Next time, maybe we can show you somewhere really interesting like the Amazon rainforest or the Sahara Desert." Krex closed his eyes and tried to process what he had learned. If this was one of humanity's safer territories, what did their dangerous areas look like? And more importantly, what kind of species evolved to consider this nightmarish environment suitable for raising children? The emergency medical shuttle touched down on the human orbital station with barely a whisper, its engines designed for stealth rather than speed. Inside the cramped passenger compartment, Battlemaster Krex lay unconscious on a medical gurney, his breathing shallow and labored. The other 2 surviving warriors from the Australian expedition sat motionless in their seats, their eyes wide and unfocused as they stared at nothing. Dr. Williams met the shuttle at the airlock, her medical team already prepared with equipment that would have been classified as advanced chemical warfare apparatus by most galactic civilizations. She moved with the calm efficiency of someone who dealt with exotic toxins and trauma on a regular basis, checking each patient's vital signs while issuing rapid instructions to her staff. "Get them to Isolation Bay 3, she ordered, noting the unusual readings on her scanner. "I want full spectrum analysis on all unknown compounds in their systems. And someone contact the Australian Wildlife Centre for antivenom recommendations." The human medical facility was unlike anything the Corthany had ever seen, where their own hospitals were sterile, heavily shielded environments designed to protect patients from contamination. This place seemed almost casual in its approach to deadly substances. Medical staff moved freely between treatment areas, handling vials of concentrated venom and radioactive compounds with nothing more than basic protective gear. When Krex finally regained consciousness 6 hours later, the first thing he saw was a human child pressed against the observation window of his treatment room. The young girl, perhaps 8 years old, was watching the medical procedures with obvious fascination while eating what appeared to be some form of recreational food. "Is that the alien?" the child asked her mother, who was reviewing charts at a nearby workstation. "Yes, dear," the woman replied without looking up. "He and his friends had a difficult time with some of our local wildlife. Dr. Williams is making sure they recover properly." Krex tried to sit up, his head spinning from whatever medications the humans had given him. Through the transparent wall, he could see into the main treatment area where his fellow warriors were being tended to by medical staff. The casual way the humans handled their care was both reassuring and deeply disturbing. Dr. Williams entered his room carrying a tablet computer and wearing the kind of expression that medical professionals reserve for particularly interesting cases. "How are you feeling, Battlemaster? Your vital signs have stabilized and the antivenom cocktail seems to be working well." "Antivenom cocktail?" Krex managed to ask, his voice hoarse from the breathing apparatus they had used during his unconscious period. "Oh, yes," Dr. Williams replied, checking his chart. "You were exposed to at least 7 different venomous species during your expedition. Huntsman spider, funnel web spider, taipan snake, blue-ringed octopus, several varieties of bull ants, and a few others we're still identifying. Quite an impressive collection, really. The matter-of-fact way she discussed his near-death experience was almost more shocking than the experience itself. On any civilized world, exposure to a single, venomous creature would be considered a major medical emergency requiring specialized treatment and extended recovery time. Your people have treatments for all of these poisons? Krex asked, struggling to understand how such medical capabilities were possible. Most of them, yes, Dr. Williams confirmed. We've been dealing with these creatures for thousands of years, so we've developed fairly comprehensive treatment protocols. The tricky part was figuring out how your physiology would react to our standard antivenoms. Your species processes toxins differently than humans do. Through the observation window, Krex watched a human teenager walk past carrying a small terrarium containing what appeared to be a deadly spider. The young man paused to show his specimen to the child at the window, both of them discussing the creature with obvious enthusiasm. Your young ones study these dangerous creatures? Krex asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Dr. Williams glanced toward the window and smiled. That's my nephew, actually. He's doing a school project on local arachnids. Education about our wildlife is a standard part of the curriculum here. Children need to understand their environment to stay safe. The concept of children being educated about lethal creatures as part of normal schooling was beyond Krex's comprehension. On Korthik, young warriors trained for years before being considered ready to face even the lesser dangers of their homeworld. How do your people survive childhood? He asked, genuinely curious about the mechanisms that allowed such a fragile-looking species to thrive in such a hostile environment. The same way we survive everything else, Dr. Williams replied. Education, preparation, and respect for our environment. Most dangerous encounters happen when people are careless or uninformed. We teach children to identify threats, avoid unnecessary risks, and seek help when needed. As if to demonstrate her point, an alarm began sounding in the adjacent treatment room. Through the window, Krex could see medical staff responding to what appeared to be a serious emergency. One of his fellow warriors was convulsing on the treatment table while monitors displayed rapidly changing data. Delayed reaction to the blue-ringed octopus venom, Dr. Williams observed, already moving toward the door. We expected this might happen. His nervous system is fighting the neurotoxin differently than we anticipated. She paused at the doorway, her expression completely calm despite the apparent life-threatening situation. Don't worry, we've seen this before in other non-human patients. We have protocols for managing delayed toxic reactions. Krex watched through the window as the human medical team worked with practiced efficiency to stabilize his fellow warrior. They injected multiple medications, adjusted life support systems, and monitored dozens of different readings with the kind of coordinated precision that suggested extensive experience with similar emergencies. How often do you treat cases like this? Krex asked when Dr. Williams returned an hour later. Venomous animal encounters? Several times a week, she replied. Though alien physiology cases are obviously much rarer. We're learning a lot from treating your team, actually. Your species' resistance to certain toxins is quite impressive. The casual mention of treating multiple venom cases weekly struck Krex like a physical blow. These humans lived in an environment where deadly encounters were so common that their medical facilities were specifically designed to handle them on a routine basis. Your world, he said slowly. How many species like the ones we encountered exist there? Dr. Williams considered the question seriously. Well, Australia alone has about 10,000 species of spiders, roughly 100 species of venomous snakes, 20 or so varieties of deadly jellyfish, several dozen toxic plants, and various other hazardous wildlife, but that's just one continent. Each region has its own unique dangers. The numbers were staggering. Krex's homeworld of Korthik, considered the most dangerous planet in known space, hosted perhaps a few dozen truly lethal species. The idea that a single continent on Earth contained hundreds of times that number was almost incomprehensible. And humans live among all of these dangers willingly? He asked. It's our home, Dr. Williams said simply. We've evolved here alongside these creatures for millions of years. They're part of our ecosystem, and we've learned to coexist with them. Most of them avoid humans unless threatened, and we've developed strategies for dealing with the rest. As Krex recovered over the following days, he began to understand that humanity's relationship with danger was fundamentally different from anything the Korthani had ever encountered. These beings had not conquered their hostile environment through superior weapons or technology, but through adaptation, knowledge, and an almost supernatural level of preparation for the worst possible scenarios. The human medical facility itself was a testament to this approach. Every piece of equipment, every protocol, every staff member was prepared to deal with toxins, trauma, and biological hazards that would overwhelm most galactic civilizations. They had turned their world's attempts to kill them into a comprehensive understanding of how to preserve life under impossible conditions. When Krex was finally cleared for discharge, Dr. Williams handed him a small data pad containing medical information about his treatment. In case your people want to understand how we managed your recovery, she explained. Though I should warn you, some of our methods might seem extreme by galactic standards. As he prepared to return to his ship, Krex realized that the Korthani Empire had made a fundamental error in judgment. They had encountered not a primitive species ripe for conquest, but a civilization so adapted to danger that they had forgotten to be afraid of it. The implications of this discovery would change everything the Korthani thought they knew about survival, strength, and their place in the galaxy. The War Council chamber aboard the Shadowbane had never hosted a discussion quite like this one. Commander Vorth sat at the head of the table, his forearms resting on the polished metal surface while his senior officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The holographic displays around the room showed data that challenged everything the Korthani Empire had believed about their place in the galaxy. The preliminary analysis is complete, Science Officer Dex reported, his voice carefully controlled. Despite the revolutionary nature of his findings, the human homeworld of Earth registers as a Class 15 Deathworld according to our standard classification system. For comparison, our own Korthic rates as a Class 3. The silence that followed. This announcement was deafening. Several officers exchanged glances, their expressions suggesting they hoped this was some form of elaborate mistake or misunderstanding. Explain, Vorth commanded, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades of military service. Dex activated. The holographic display, showing comparative data from both worlds. The biodiversity index for Earth exceeds anything in our databases. They have documented over 8 million species, many of which possess lethal capabilities that would challenge our finest warriors. Their weather systems regularly produce storms with energy outputs equivalent to our orbital bombardment weapons. The display shifted to show images from Battlemaster Krex's reconnaissance mission. The assembled officers watched in stunned silence, as recordings showed creatures no larger than a Korthani finger delivering venom that had incapacitated their elite warriors. The humans have evolved alongside predators, parasites, and environmental hazards that operate on a level of sophistication we have never encountered, Dex continued. Their medical facilities routinely process toxins that would require specialized military equipment on our worlds. They consider exposure to lethal organisms to be a normal part of childhood education. Sub-Commander Grex, who had led the initial diplomatic mission, spoke up with obvious reluctance. There is another factor we must consider. During our cultural exchange, the humans mentioned their classification system. They referred to Earth as a Class 12 Deathworld, but they dismissed this as merely scientific terminology. A Class 12 on their scale corresponds to a Class 15 on ours, Dex confirmed. Their classification system is more conservative because they use their own world as a baseline rather than optimal garden world conditions. The implications of this revelation settled over the council like a dark cloud. The Korthani Empire had spent 3 millennia believing they were the apex predators of the galaxy, the ultimate survivors who had earned their dominance through superior adaptation to hostile environments. Now they discovered that humanity had evolved on a world so dangerous that it made Korthik look like a protected nursery. What of their military capabilities? Vorth asked, dreading the answer. This is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of our analysis, Grex replied. Human military doctrine is based on the assumption that they will be fighting other humans, beings who can survive in environments that would kill us, who consider persistence hunting a recreational activity, and who view chemical weapons and biological agents as acceptable battlefield tools. The holographic display showed footage from human military training exercises. The assembled Korthani officers watched in growing horror as humans voluntarily subjected themselves to conditions that would be considered torture by galactic standards, then emerged from the experience stronger and more determined. They trained their soldiers by exposing them to simulated combat environments that exceed the natural hazards of most deathworlds, Dex observed. What they consider basic training would challenge our most elite special forces units. Tactical. Officer next leaned forward, his voice strained. Are you suggesting that these humans could pose a threat to the Empire? I am suggesting, Vorth replied slowly, that we have encountered a species that makes us look like the garden world dwellers we have always despised. The council chamber fell silent as this truth sank in. For 3,000 years, the Korthani had ruled through fear and superior firepower, confident that no species could match their physical capabilities or survival instincts. Now they faced the reality that they had been apex predators only because they had never encountered actual apex predators. What are our options? Vorth asked, his tactical mind already working through the possibilities. Military conquest appears inadvisable, Grex admitted with obvious reluctance. Our initial projections suggested easy victory over a primitive species. Current analysis indicates that humans might be capable of not only defending themselves but potentially conquering and holding Korthani territory. The idea that any species could successfully invade Korthik was almost incomprehensible. Their homeworld had been considered unconquerable, precisely because its hostile environment served as a natural defense against invasion. But if humans could thrive in conditions that made Korthik look hospitable, then even this advantage was meaningless. There is another option, Vorth said finally, alliance. The word hung in the air like an alien concept. The Korthani Empire had never formed alliances with equals because they had never encountered equals. They had subjects, tributaries, and protected territories, but never true partners. The humans appear to prefer diplomatic solutions, Grex observed. They have shown no aggressive intentions despite clearly possessing the capability to destroy us. This suggests they might be open to mutual cooperation rather than domination. As if summoned by their discussion, a communication request arrived from the human fleet. Ambassador Riley appeared on the main display, her expression as friendly and optimistic as ever. Commander Vorth, I hope your warriors are recovering well from their visit to Earth. We wanted to follow up on our earlier discussions about establishing formal relations between our species. Vorth struggled to maintain his composure as he faced this deceptively fragile-looking being who represented a species that could apparently wipe out the Korthani Empire without breaking a sweat. Ambassador Riley, we have completed our evaluation of your proposal. The Korthani Empire would be honored to establish an alliance with humanity. Riley's face lit up with genuine pleasure. That's wonderful news. We're looking forward to working together and learning from each other. I should mention that we're planning to establish some joint research stations on a few of our colony worlds. They're quite temperate compared to Earth, so they should be suitable for extended cooperation. The Korthani officers exchanged worried glances. If humanity's temperate colony worlds were anything like their homeworld, those research stations would be located in environments that challenged the very definition of survivability. We would be very interested in such cooperation, Vorth replied, wondering what he was committing his people to. Excellent, Riley continued. Dr. Cross is particularly excited about the biological exchange possibilities. She mentioned something about showing your scientists some of the really interesting ecosystems on Earth. I believe she's planning to take you to the Amazon rainforest next time you visit. After the communication ended, the War Council sat in stunned silence. The Amazon rainforest, according to their preliminary data, was even more hostile than the Australian wasteland where their warriors had suffered their humiliating defeat. We need to completely restructure our understanding of galactic power dynamics, Vorth said finally. The humans are not just another species to be conquered or protected. They are what we thought we were, but actually achieved it. Science officer. Dex nodded grimly. I recommend we begin immediate upgrades to our environmental protection systems and medical facilities. If we are going to work alongside humans, we need to be prepared for their casual approach to mortal danger. As the council disbanded, each officer carried with them the weight of a new reality. The Korthani Empire would endure, but it would never again be the undisputed masters of the galaxy. They had found their equals, and those equals happened to be a species so adapted to danger that they had forgotten what fear meant. In the privacy of his quarters, Commander Vorth updated the galactic database with humanity's new classification, where once the entry had read primitive garden world species suitable for immediate conquest, it now carried a simple warning that would be transmitted to every Korthani ship in the fleet. Approach with extreme caution. Recommend diplomatic. Protocols only. These beings consider our Deathworld a vacation destination. The age of Korthani supremacy was over, but perhaps something better had begun. For the first time in their history, they would learn what it meant to work alongside beings who understood that survival was not about avoiding danger, but about making danger irrelevant through preparation, adaptation, and the kind of casual competence that only came from millions of years of evolution in hell itself.